Hello and welcome to a special edition of Planet Waves TV. My name is Eric Francis Coppolino, the host of Planet Waves FM and the author of the Planet Waves horoscope and the founder of the whole Planet Waves project, which goes back about 25 years in its current form. Welcome and thanks for joining me. This is a video about astrology books. I was upstairs cleaning out a room where there's a lot of books. It's kind of the book repository in my apartment and office, where I kind of have a room where I've kept the other bookshelves more or less, probably less orderly, by having a kind of a place to siphon them off. And I found a box of books that I've been planning to base this video on, which solved the mystery of where they went when I was looking for them at other times, because I forgot I got this whole thing together and put all the books together and was going to do this video. And at the moment, I have one reader writing to me inquiring about an astrology book list, and these days. One request is often all it takes to get me to do something. So eager am I to have dynamic interaction with other astrologers and astrology students to keep this tradition going. And astrology is a tradition. Every culture has astrology. It's a little bit or a lot different depending on the culture. China has diversity of types of astrology and comet divination, and everybody's got something, and the astrology that we have filters in through a diversity of different sources, but it mostly comes through the Greek tradition, and then a kind of parallel branch of that, which is the Vedic tradition. I don't want to get into that. I've got some recordings with people much more knowledgeable about these things than I am. But I take a kind of a reserved approach to reading for relatively new astrologers. And I want to say, for one thing, most important, that I'm impressed that anyone would even try to learn astrology today, because it's in the current mental environment very difficult to have the kind of attention span that you need to be able to learn something that is so multifaceted and so in depth, and that lends itself to being quite diluted by digital consciousness. And with astrology, you really have to be able to stay focused and go deep, and it takes years to learn. I think this may not be encouraging for people kind of in the last third of their lives, but or less. But 10 years, you can be on your feet in a year. But mastery of anything takes a while, and it takes patience, and it takes practice. And we're in another scenario in society where there is a very low level of introspection in the world right now. People are not really that interested in looking within, and part of that is because the whole within thing is being kind of exploded on us, and we think that it's introspective to take a picture of your taco plate and put that up on Instagram or something. And I think this is a perfect example of how the necessary interior consciousness required to learn astrology and be able to read astrology accurately for yourself, for another person, or for some group or collective as a writer or presenter. It's got special challenges today. Next thought is the idea, and I've got all these books around me, this whole carton here, and a few on the desk in front of me, and I'm going to go through them all. I have no idea how long this is going to take. I'll try to keep it under 45 minutes. Is that you want to get to the point where you are learning astrology from reading charts. The charts are your best teacher, and I've never ever heard an astrologer say this. And after The charts are your best teacher, but your clients are right up there with your charts, because your clients, if you're able to learn enough astrology to be able to be gently inquisitive with the client and get the client talking and place the conversation in the framework of time. That's astrology. If something is not set in the framework of time, it's not really astrology. It might, in a lot of things it might be, but astrology is a temporal framework, i.e., when things happen and where they happen is very important in astrology. No, I kind of lost where I was going with that. Okay, so the chart. You want the chart to be your teacher, and you want your clients to be your teacher, which leads me to another point, which is that there is a branching in the road that astrology students will get to at a certain point, and that is to go in the direction of research astrology, which is largely going to be mundane astrology, versus natal astrology, i.e. doing readings for people and doing some counseling with people. It happens that the trajectory that my career has taken was I have done both of them in approximately equal measure. I come in and out of doing personal readings depending on my time availability. I've got a lot of public responsibilities, and I would say that a majority of my work has been in the research and collective realm, but certainly not at the expense of really understanding natal astrology, and also having had quite a bit of training in the therapy process so that I can actually handle a person who is in some trouble or going through a transition. And, we must begin this whole endeavor as a spiritual endeavor, with the astrologer as a servant of the cosmos, and then as a thing where we must be committed to doing no harm. So that has to be right out at front. And I suggest that you devote your life to that generally, and that you be in the habit of asking for internal guidance all the time, so that you're not really depending on these resources entirely. You're going to be guided by the Holy Spirit. You're going to be guided by your inner teacher, who's going to bring you the right people at the right time, and you're going to be called into the life of people at the right time. And so whatever I may present to you in terms of these books and my ideas about books, underneath all of it, we're talking about a spiritual endeavor. I think this is really essential to remember, that it can't be just us doing this. Before I get into the books, also, another thought, which is that this is really a team learning process. Even 30 years ago, before digital had taken over, when I started doing this a little bit, approximately, I started on tarot cards. Much before that, that you have to have people you can talk to and ask questions of. The way that I learned astrology was that initially I knew an astrologer named Flo Higgins, who would kind of, she was a newspaper editor, and the newspaper didn't even have a horoscope column, but it definitely had an astrologer. And she was a famous person in this particular part of New Jersey, and was well known as the editor of the Echo Sentinel, well known as an astrologer and owner of an astrology bookstore down at the Jersey Shore called Aquarius Rising Books in Fairhaven. And so there was always a conversation in the office about astrology on some level, a little one-sided at times. But once I then moved into more serious study about 5 years later, it began with mentoring relationships. And I think that that dependable mentoring relationships with people whose integrity you are a witness to, and you must go beyond image in this. People have a very good at presenting themselves as being these kind of impeccable people on the internet, and then you meet them and you find out that other things are going on. And so you want to have your way of getting to know people, and I mean specifically in person and on the phone, not just through their presentations. And learned from flow, and then my next breakthrough was somebody suggested that I read a horoscope in the New York Post, and you think, well, how good could that be? But I probably learned. It's hard to put something in some metric as boring as percents, but pretty much how to ride the bicycle of astrology I learned from reading Patrick Walker in the New York Post, and that's the whole idea, is to be able to ride the bicycle of astrology and not have training wheels or someone holding you up. And there's a transition point where you're going to be looking things up for a while, and learning how to get the chart going. But a lot of that involves looking things up, and we're here to talk about books you might use to do that, and why I think these are good books to use. But then you will eventually reach a threshold if you're dedicated and you keep a chart with you at all times, and you're writing down the interesting things that happen, and you're tracking the moon and the sun through the signs. You'll get to a point where suddenly the chart is kind of a self-propelled thing, and it's really talking to you. So there's nothing wrong with using books as commentaries and getting a kind of a baseline concept of what something might in the chart might mean. However, the books are never complete. And as I pointed out in my one of my little short ebooks, which I do recommend reading, called Astrology Revealed, that the books don't do something very important. Planets are going to be in a sign and in a house, and they're going to have many subtle shades of being in a sign and a house, and they're going to be in aspect. And I've never seen an astrology book go very far on discussing all the context around which you might read a placement. It's easy to look up the moon in Capricorn, but the moon is never just in Capricorn. The moon it might be in Capricorn conjunct Neptune and Uranus. For almost everybody listening with the moon in Capricorn, they're going to have something like that. A lot of people are going to have that. 10-year generation is going to have something like that. And so the thing to remember is that there is all of this context that's around every last thing you're looking at. And one of the kind of aphorisms I have developed in the course of doing both astrology and investigative reporting, and that's an important thing to remember, is that I came to astrology as a news journalist. And the idea of news journalism is to elucidate, make plain, make clear, and express what is so, right? And not in any kind of a cryptic way, right? Not in any kind of esoteric way. I'm a little. I probably shouldn't be doing this because I keep losing my train of thought in the middle of it. Okay, so remember that the books are not the bottom line. The books are going to give you a basis of comparison. I remember where it was. They're going to give you a basis of comparison. And remember that even when you're using a book, you're going to have to look up books, plural, several things to put the whole thing into context, because context and meaning are essential to consider together. So let's take an example, the color blue. Well, no, the word blue. Forget about the color blue. You say the word blue. You have no idea what it means. It's essentially as meaningless as a random letter of the alphabet. Blue could be a kind of music. Blue could be how you're feeling. Blue could be the color of your room. Blue could be 1,000 other colors and shades of blue. Blue might be blue up. There's a lot of possibilities for how blue is going to shake out when you finally place it into context. And so astrological facts tend to be meaningless, as are all facts are meaningless, until they're framed in context. And so your job as an astrologer is to constantly be looking for the context. You want context around what you're doing, and that means getting backstory from people. It means understanding the context of certain astrological features, what a house means, what the history of the house is, and so forth. Okay, so let's remembering that the goal is to read this primarily, and have this thing be this kind of self-levitating thing. Pardon me. Here, I've got that. All right. Self-levitating thing. Let's get going. Okay, so the first thing you need are handy reference books, and that are going to answer a certain what is it factor. So let's say you're looking at Venus and Gemini for the first time. You want information about Venus and Gemini that is what I would call objective. Now, all writers have a viewpoint, but some writers are really pushing an agenda. They want to indoctrinate you into a kind of an idea, and the books I've chosen are the ones that are not about indoctrinating you into an idea. Before we get to those books, I'm not working from a script here. The book one for astrologers is the ephemeris. Ephemerides is plural, and you want to be able to use a paper ephemeris. It is looks like the most boring thing in the world. It's basically a train schedule of planetary placements, and you want to be able to work with an ephemeris if for no other reason than to honor the tradition of learning an ephemeris. Now, most people are not learning how to cast charts by themselves. When I do a chart like this, I'm drawing data from a diversity of sources. I'm not actually interpolating the planetary positions. I am drawing data from digital sources and possibly an ephemeris paper, but that's different from casting a chart. But if you're not going to learn how to cast charts, where you would at least want to be able to use the primary tool of the astrological craft, which is the ephemeris. And there's a number of different ones you can get. The American ephemeris is the most available. Whether you get noon or midnight doesn't really matter anymore. The Rosicrucian still exists, still in print. I like the American ephemeris better. It has Chiron. There's another one called Aureas, Aureas. I can think it is the best ephemeris. It's published in France, and it includes series and so forth. Now, there are things you're going to need that are in the ephemeris, but you want to be able to figure out where the moon is, or to be able to pick out when a planetary retrograde is going to happen manually. It's not as hard as learning standard shift. It's a very basic thing. You're going to look up a planet and a day, and there you're going to see the position either at noon or midnight for that day. So, the ephemeris, the first tool of the astrological profession. All right, now as far as let's go in this order. Next is in learning anything. And this is coming from a person who's learned a lot of different things in my life. You need to know what words mean. Much misunderstanding could be spared and delays if you know what words mean. Now, I don't know how many times a day you go to the dictionary, but I go at least every day. And in my book purging project upstairs, I have well over a shelf of dictionaries. I'm keeping all of them, no matter how many books I may get rid of. So I will buy any dictionary I see in a used bookstore. The Arcana Dictionary comes out in the mid-1990s. It was part of a series of books that came out, of which I'm going to recommend one other and only one other. And it is absolutely exquisite. Fred Gettings, I'm not sure he's around on the planet anymore. I've tried to contact him. I think his primary things were art and tarot, but he has a fantastic mind for esoteric material. This is a very coherent dictionary, the Arcana Dictionary of Astrology. Okay. And there's really not another good one, and you can see this has everything you need, because you need to be able to go right to the what is it factor, and I don't mean like in some ultimate sense of ultimate truth, but just basically to get a handle on a on an idea. Now, closely related to that is this, and you can probably pick this up for a couple of dollars. The Astrology Encyclopedia by James Lewis, and it is similar to a dictionary, but it's just got a little bit of a different viewpoint, and so it's not only giving the meaning of words, it also includes some people I've just opened to. Steve Forrest, vaccine pusher, should say that. I'll rewrite this chapter. And it includes some basic delineations of asteroids. It's not the greatest on that, but it's very good for at least getting a handle on the what is it factor. And an essential thing to learn in doing any form of deep study is to cross-reference and make up your own mind about what's going on in the context you're working in. Cross-reference, make up your own mind in the context that you are working in. Capiche? Okay. Good. All right, so we've covered now the ephemeris, and we have covered the Astrology Encyclopedia, again, $1. And this you probably get for $10 or $15. So it's worth getting 2 of them, actually. So you've got 1 to give away or keep in the summer bungalow. Now, while we're on the what is it factor, I want to make a case for using tarot cards as part of your astrology study. So there is I have a couple of preferred decks for that. It is Aleister Crowley who begins the tradition of putting astrological references on many of the cards. Let's pick one randomly here. This is Mars and Aries. This is the two of the two of wands, and what this is not the greatest deck to read. I think it's a little sticky, psychically sticky. It's a little bit astral, but it's a great deck for illustrations of energies, just as a kind of a picture reference. And additionally, Crowley, for all of his weird reputation, is one of the genuinely brilliant esoteric teachers, I think, who came through the 20th century. And when I was first learning astrology, when I really committed myself to learning astrology in summer of 1994, 1995, I got a tremendous use out of the Book of Thoth by Crowley, which is a book describing the deck he's working on before it comes out. He dies like in 48, I think, and his deck comes out 1968, I think, 20 years later. He never saw it. Neither did Lady Frida Harris. They only had their paintings. Took 5 or 7 years to do this. And so this book, the Book of Thoth, is so rich with astrological ideas that I'm so glad that I got into this, and then I spent I think the entire summer of '95 studying this and learning the major arcana really good, getting a sense of what's going on with Kabbalah. I didn't become a Kabbalist, but at least I have a sense of how that works and all of that. So again, we're in the realm of reference materials. The ephemeris and the dictionary and a short encyclopedia like Lewis wrote. Again, it's not a big deal. It's just easy reference guide, and then tarot deck or 2 or 3, and a book, the Book of Thoth, essential reading. Now, the other deck I think is fabulous for astrology is the Rachel Pollack deck, the Handel Tarot. It's another deck that's cross-referenced with runes and with other things and with elements. And so, if you're going to have 2 decks laying around, three really, I would have the Crowley Tarot, the Handel Tarot, and Ordinary Rider-Waite Tarot. One will do, this all depends on how deep you want to go. And like, it is a devotion to do this. You really are. You're committing to something that is on the level of the value of a university education. I have learned a lot more doing this, studying this, and all the people I met and all the interviews than my entire university education, for sure. All right, so let's see. We've got the Book of Thoth out of the way. We've got let's move the cards out of the way. We've got the ephemerides here. That's good. We won't come back to those. All right, next. So you need you need a ready guide to what is that aspect. Again, it's not the bottom line, but I'm choosing a couple of books here that will help you grasp the aspect from a point of view that's not going to weigh you down with that aspect. Now, you'll see the books get a little judgmental at times. Some of them get a little judgmental, and I try to pick the ones that are not that judgmental at all. I mean, look, the writer has to be saying something. They've got to say something. But this is why you want to check a couple of books when you are looking up an aspect. In Astrology Revealed, I have a whole chapter on Venus square Mars, and I went through all the books on my scores of bookshelves, and maybe looked up 10 different references to Venus square Mars, and you can see that there's a diversity, and I was explaining that to kind of teach the bias of a lot of these books. So for a book without a lot of bias, The Astrologer's Handbook by Louis Acker and Fran Sequoian. I knew Louis. I guess he's still around. I had this crazy thing happen when I started studying astrology. I went looking for many astrologers, and I just started meeting others. And within a couple of months, I was hanging out at farmers markets with Louis Acker, and we even went UFO hunting one night. So Fran Sequoian, never met her. She was mainly the astrologer. He was mainly the author. But this book will get you very far in handling basic placements, aspects, and the meaning of signs. Okay, and this is an old version of it, hardback version. If you're looking for any of these books or can't find them, I'm happy to help you find them. And if you're studying with me, you might even have access to my extra copies, which I try to keep them around. Okay, another one in the realm of dependable reference books, absolutely indispensable, Astrology, A Cosmic Science by Isabel Hickey. She's just brilliant. Any judgments she makes that sound a little bit harsh. She's a little into karma and stuff like that, but she's coming from a loving place, but a very experienced place. Has taught a lot of people astrology, and she was also one of the first reasonably contemporary writers to actually write intelligent things about Pluto and Pluto aspects. Long before Jeff Green was in business, Isabel Hickey had a pamphlet, which I've got a copy of, Pluto or Minerva, Your Choice. I found in an old first edition of that pamphlet, which was then put into this book. So Astrology, A Cosmic Science by Isabel Hickey. Now, one thing about Hickey and many of the other books I am advocating is that she was, according to her daughter, and you can also tell from reading it, a voracious reader of Alice A. Bailey. And at the end, I'm going to talk about Bailey a little bit, but you know that Hickey's viewpoint was informed by Bailey, who's part of a very deep tradition, which I think is necessary to have good grounding. I'll come to that close to the end. All right, so now we've got the ephemerides are here. Astrology, Cosmic Science is there. All right, now let's see now what else. All right, Now, speaking of ready reference books, hard to find this one, but it's online. Dane Rudhyar's An Astrological Mandala. So you want to know the meanings of the individual degrees. A lot of astrology is written about signs and houses. This is about the individual degrees, but it's Rudhyar, and it's so humane, and I consider this his very best and most readable astrology book. I think also his last one, and it's a reinterpretation of Mark Edmund Jones, Reverend Doctor Mark Edmund Jones, an initial attempt with Elsie Wheeler, and he reframes a book from I think the 30s, and makes it, he brings it up to date in the 1960s. I think it comes out in 1970s. Absolutely a joy. This book is just fabulous book of philosophy. The problem with it is, I think that you need these books on paper, but this one is now going for between $100 and $200. I'm amazed that who owned this thing put it out of print. It's just patently ridiculous to do that. I don't know what vintage books. I don't know what they're thinking. And it came out in 1973. So this is kind of the summation of his lifetime of work as essentially the inventor of psychological astrology. I had a long discourse with Melanie Reinhardt about that, and it's fairly clear that Rudhyar invents psychological astrology. Now, while we're on that topic, very briefly, Robert Hand said something interesting to me personally one day, and I've learned a lot of astrology in phone calls with people like Rob Hand, right? It doesn't get any better than that. And he said all astrology is psychological. All modern astrology is psychological astrology. And what I try to teach astrologers to do is to beware of psychological astrology, meaning be aware of it, but also to know it's not the only astrology. And the psychological astrology must be answered by two things. One is mundane astrology, which is the astrology of the physical world and physical events, and horary astrology, which is divinatory astrology. Now that leads me to a book that I don't have handy here. I'm not sure where it went or how it got left out of this box. And a lot of these books, you don't need to read them straight through the book. You can use them as I think none of the books I've mentioned so far you need to read straight through the book. This one is the easiest one to read straight through. It's got short. It's only a couple hundred pages, and you'll pick up our whole viewpoint. The other one's going to drive you crazy, and what you really, I think, want to do is for example, take a topic. You're going to learn a planet. You're going to learn everything you've got to learn about Venus, and so you will go through your different books and do a kind of a little mini course of study on Venus. And so all of the books I've mentioned so far can be and will serve well as reference books. You don't have to read all the way through. We get to an exception of that with The Moment of Astrology by Jeffrey Cornelius, one of the great astrology books ever written. And I have a 3-day workshop with him if you are interested in that. We've put that into Astrology Student Union. And by the way, I haven't even pitched my astrology school, but astrologystudentunion.org. And I was so fortunate that this book came out when I was just getting into deep study, and basically spending all day every day doing astrology for many months on end. And it just came out, and Dave Rell was a close friend of mine, teacher of mine. He was the owner of the Astrology Center of America, formerly Astrology Center of Southern California, and said, you got to read this. And it not only changed my astrology, it changed my life. It framed so many things for me. A brilliant work of philosophy. Again, The Moment of Astrology by Jeffrey Cornelius. And what he does is he explains astrology as a divinatory art. We are under the influence of quite a bit of astrology that has it practiced as kind of pseudo psychology and pseudo psychiatry and psychic surgery and all this stuff. And I advise being cautious about that. And if you're going to do psychological astrology, you've got to study therapy and go to therapy. The antidote to psychological astrology is horary astrology and mundane astrology. And Cornelius makes the case that at the end and the beginning, all astrology is divinatory astrology. And to the extent that astrology is psychological, I think it must be conducted by querying the client. You've got to let them tell you what they're on about, how they feel, what they think, what they believe, and what their values are, rather than you telling them what you think they're on about and what their values are about. And you might say, well, what's the use of that? Well, if you listen to somebody for an hour and you speak for 10 minutes, you'll probably get it about right. But you shouldn't be speaking at all until you actually understand the person's situation. Now, there is a book that I don't have here. I don't remember the author, but I saw her lecture once, and she was brilliant, and it's called The Consulting Astrologer's Guidebook. And this is important if you're going to be planning to be doing consultations for other people, whether as a business or not, just as a spiritual vocation. And it was she who said at the end of a lecture once that I caught the last 5 minutes of, and I wanted to stand up on the chair and cheer and howl. She said, if you've got a 1 hour session booked and you've got to take 55 minutes to find out what's really going on with the client, and you speak for 5, then that's what you do. And so I developed and learned a huge amount of astrology and learned how to let the chart speak by learning how to just read the Chiron ephemeris and query the person about different points in their life. Now, I will do this for you if you'd like. It's called a chart key reading or advanced chart key reading, and it's worth getting your chart done if you're going to be doing this, so that a few times so you've got a sense of it. And what I will do with you in the if you get the advanced chart key reading is I'll give you your Chiron journaling dates, and suddenly you'll figure your chart out in an hour, basically, if you're interested, because suddenly it's all going to kind of be clear, which Chiron has a way of doing. So while we're on the topic of Chiron, let's go right to one of 2 books I recommend on Chiron. This is my original copy. All the lamination is coming off. Chiron, Rainbow Bridge Between the Inner and Outer Planets. Now, by Barbara Hand Clow. And I've gotten as close to these authors as I possibly can, by the way. I've studied with and traveled with Barbara. No, pretty good. And this is one of 2 essential books on Chiron. Now, the difference in them is that this is a kind of a new age view of Chiron. Chiron is a kind of a morph of Saturn and Uranus, and Barbara definitely takes the Uranian, the vibrational energy approach to Chiron. But for the practicalities of working with a client and reading a chart and being like, you're looking at something like Mars opposite Chiron, and you're like, I just need an idea for that. This is a great book. She never steers you wrong, but you can go deeper. That's the important thing. So those are the books you want. You want the books that don't fuck your head up or make you hate yourself. This is a occupational danger of doing astrology, is you can come out of it, you can come out of any book or article suddenly hating yourself. Even a horoscope column can do this, where it turns you against yourself in some little mendacious way that that's not needed, not appropriate, not helpful at all. And so Barbara will never, she doesn't do this, nor does Isabel Hickey. These books have been filtered through many years of work, and they're the books I would bring if I was to leave for another planet and I was told to bring an astrology library. These are the ones I would bring. Okay, next. We're on the subject of the minor. Well, let's all right. So the other Chiron book, the Saturn version, There's really two. Melanie Reinhardt, Chiron and the Healing Journey. But I'm not sure that that's necessary. If you read, well, I would say that it's a companion book. They do not need to be read in order. And then she's got a second book that handles Chiron and Saturn. So she starts with Saturn. The book is called To the Edge and Beyond, Saturn, Chiron, and the Centaurs. And so she begins with a discussion of Saturn. And Barbara Clow is great with Saturn, too. And you need to understand Saturn, I think, of all the planets to do this work. And once you understand Saturn, Chiron's very easy to understand. And so the Saturn-oriented books on Chiron are Chiron and the Healing Journey by Melanie Reinhardt, and To the Edge and Beyond, Saturn, Chiron, and the Centaurs. That is one of the great books also, Saturn, Chiron, and the Centaurs, To the Edge and Beyond. It's a workshop transcript, and Melanie has her beautifully circumspect teaching style. The good astrologers are always a little circumspect. They don't want to nail anything to anyone. You want to have a lot of room to be able to think about things. Okay, so that covers Chiron books. Now, while we're on the subject of the minor planets, you're going to encounter the asteroids. And as far as I'm concerned, there's really only one genuinely dependable source on the asteroids who is not blowing a lot of viewpoint up your nose. And that is Martha Lang Westcott. And this is her first book, Mechanics of the Future. She's got a lot of books, but this will teach you basic asteroids, and you do not need to read through it. It's in many ways a reference book. It's typed on an old computer, hand typeset. You don't need to read through the whole thing, but it's a reference book, right? So this is another one of the reference books, as are most of these books. You get basic delineations of them in as standalones and in aspect to one another. You might not get into the asteroids, but you're going to get curious about them. Okay, one last one. Oh, I've got a couple of more. I know this is a lot, but this is enough to fill one bookshelf. And these are truly time-tested classics. Time-tested by me. I've read, and others, worked with about 2,000 clients over the years and written about 5,000 articles. So, okay. Planets in Transit by Rob Hand. Now, it's just a basic 1, 2, 3 of what a transit is about. You're going to learn transits from experience. You're going to learn them from your experience. You're going to learn them from your boyfriend's and girlfriend's experience, from your kids' experience, from your friends' experience. And in my method of teaching astrology, I will teach you to do a transit interview, but with a client or with yourself. And it's an easy method. If you just follow the very simple instructions, and you've got a lot of room to work. But if you're looking for, you need an idea of Saturn conjunct Neptune. You need an idea for Mars square Saturn. You just want to get a concept. Planets in transit will help you. Rob is a very good astrologer. He's become one of the most scholarly of all the astrologers alive in our time. I hope he lives a long time. And there is my interview with him is fantastic, and you learn a lot about him. Now, speaking of Rob Hand, I can't believe I've left this one out. But hold on, bookshelf is right there. Maybe I've gone here, and I'm going to push this one up closer to the top of the list. In the early 90s, Rob got together with a couple of other guys and started putting out books about classical astrology, and they're nice because they're short. This is essential reading, night and day. Look at this. That's it. It's like 60 pages. But even better is Whole Sign Houses by Rob Hand. And you'll occasionally hear my raps on not getting caught in this controversy. And should people engage me to teach more, I will do a whole presentation on whole sign houses, the book Whole Sign Houses, and how to work with regular houses. But it is a fantastic elucidation of what astrology is and how it works. And again, it's like 50 pages, Whole Sign Houses by Rob Hand. And the thing is, and I could have started with this, I tend to bury the lead in these presentations because I'm not working with notes. Patrick Walker once said, it's all in the houses. And if you're going to study one thing in astrology to get a foundation, study the houses. From there, it's easy to fill the houses with things that are already filled with things. And so Whole Sign Houses does that. None of the books I've presented are especially, they're not special books about the houses. I have a really good article, and I tend to work in the framework of the houses all the time. All the readings I do are going to they get 10 times their value as a class rather than as a reading, because I'm reading the chart for people who need immediate information about their life in some way. But I'm always teaching astrology while I'm doing it because I want to have you to have pegs to hang your hat on when you need it, and also to be speaking to the people with some astrological training, such that they know what I'm getting at and what my logical process was to getting there. Okay, so this is more books than I planned on, but I've got two more for you. Not an astrology book, but absolutely essential book for any quality spiritual bookshelf. Ted Andrews, I fucking love you. And it's called Animal Speak. Astrology is based on the zodiac, the EAC of the zoo. It's based on animals. And when you're working on astrology with yourself or with a client or with anyone, you're going to come up with animals. Meaning a skunk is going to walk in, or a dragonfly, or the person's going to say they saw an eagle. Or you're going to be reading, and there's going to be an eagle flying around outside your office or the client's office, which actually happened to me once. The best book available on understanding totem animals, quote, quote, totem animals. One last one. If you're going to do research astrology, you want this. Michelson, first person to teach a computer to calculate an ephemeris, figured out the nodes go retrograde, and this is a summation. Again, it is a very it is a research book. It's not a book that you read. It looks like an ephemeris in a lot of ways, and it's tables. And I don't refer to much of this book, and you could probably get by with some pages of it. But it's a nice one to have on your shelf so that you can look things up if you need to. And so with these books, you've pretty much got what you need to look things up. And a couple of books that you can really read that tie it all together. I want to make a pitch for the voluminous amount of work that I have published over the years. And one of your best friends is going to be going into Google and putting my name in quotes and then a subject and seeing what comes up. And you will find all kinds of things when you type in my name and a topic, and just noticing whether I have covered the topic. There's only a few topics I haven't covered. Note that none of these books cover progressions. I'm not happy with any of the books about progressions, but I'm very happy with my articles about progressions. And there are two, and I obviously would benefit from a devoted student who would help organize this information, because as I'm in daily publishing and broadcasting, it's difficult for me to take on extensive side projects. But the two best articles that cover progressions are What's Up with Trump, my analysis of Trump's horoscope, What's Up with Trump, quote, quote. And then This is a Test, War of the Worlds. And so I do Trump's progressions, and that one you can see them light the fuck right up. And then in This is a Test, War of the Worlds, I do Orson Welles progressions on the night of the famous radio broadcast. Once you see progressions working, you can't go back. You realize, as Rick Levine says, they're not supposed to work, but they do. And they work because astrology is all based on synchronicity. So there's one book that I left out, and I can't find my copy. I've got several, and I'm missing my original one. But it looks like this, only it's not esoteric psychology, it's esoteric astrology. And this is another one that's actually worth taking a year. Give yourself a year to read it. Most people kind of skim when they read. I don't have a copy of the book I'm reading at the moment, but when I read, I cannot do so without a pencil in my hand, and I'm constantly underlining and making margin notes and turning books into my tools. Books are tools, and they should be treated that way. They're not like disposable publications, and so this little tool set I have it's mostly going to fit into this box when I put them all back together, is pretty much the ones I would take to another planet. Of course, I didn't have a couple of them. I didn't have my copy of Whole Sign Houses. We have that on PDF printable. Let me know if you're my student. I can give you a copy of that. And I didn't have my copy of To the Edge and Beyond. I don't have Melanie's books handy, but they're around here. Besides that, this little set of books, which probably weighs 25 pounds altogether, are exactly what I would take with me were I to be told I was embarking on a space mission to another planet and not coming home. In terms of reading online, I mean, look, I tend to write online, but I like my stuff to be printable. So when I do, for example, my annual readings, for many years now, we've put them out as PDFs so you can print them out and have them and make them your own. I think that you need to make astrology charts your own, make the books your own, keep a notebook. We offer a beautiful astrology set to have, so you have a thorough set of your charts as I would cast them. That's affordable also. At the beginning, I was paying $5 a chart for Dave Rill to cast my charts. For every client, it cost me sometimes $10 or $15 just to have their charts. Finally, I got software. The software is another matter entirely. As you know, maybe you know, I talk about this often enough. I run a lot of old Macs. I have a collection of old laptops and one desktop or two that run my astrology software, which went out of business in 2019. But it's the best that I can find for what I want to do for Mac. But I'll be happy to do a video on astrology software at a later time, and I would love it if someone would help organize my list of online resources. So this is an invitation. If you want to do this and learn and have me as your teacher, I will work with you as your teacher if you will help me with some of these organizing tasks. Like, for example, someone should make a list of these books, and we publish that and link to them where you can find them. It would be nice to have a list of online resources, the different ephemerides that I use online, and even a directory of my very best teaching articles. And I have hundreds of them. And I think some of my best, very, very best work is in astrology studio readings. My mid-year video reading, we did a spring reading this year, not a mid-year, called Pluto in a Strange Land. And the inner space readings for 2023, I think that even just from those readings, you can learn enough astrology to do astrology just from a couple of my annual readings. And that's how I write them. I mean, 60,000 words each, and I'm condensing a lot of knowledge, and then I draw my own charts, and I tell the story of the chart. And so it's a divination method. It's very complicated in a lot of ways, but ultimately what you're doing is you're taking something like this, and you're telling a story that's relevant and that is true to the art, right? It's easy as an astrologer to bullshit people because they don't know what you're talking about. They don't know what you're saying. Most astrologers don't know what you're saying. You become the arbiter of whether you are a competent, qualified, and truthful person. And you're the one who has to live with the good works or bad that you do. And as an astrologer, you take on karma. You take on the any harm you do to people. You are carrying that around on your conscience, and if you're not attentive to that, it will eventually shut you down. And it is possible to do this under a do no harm policy, but you have to be in tune with your inner teacher to do that, and hopefully in tune with a couple of worldly teachers who you know have a solid basis of ethics. Right? This is in under one analysis, all of astrology is a study of ethics, and so we must conduct ourselves ethically and responsibly, and be in touch with our inner and outer teachers. All right, I think that is basically it. Thank you for checking this out and taking it in. And if you want to reach me, leave a comment wherever this is posted. We'll be watching the comments, or write to me and to my crew at office@planetwaves.net. If you have ideas, if you want to take on one of these projects, like making this book list into a list, or gathering up my articles, good way to learn, and you'll get a lot of my attention. All right. Thanks. Till next time. Lots of love. Bye for now.